That completes my, oh no, David's going to give his financial accountability report, which you have a copy of it also. Place.
As the board knows, that we are by policy required to every quarter to give you a presentation. You have allowed us to do the last quarter of the year after the audit was done, so we had real numbers to report. So you can see the budget variance that occurred for fiscal year 15, that we came just shy of what would happen on what we expected on revenues, and we did significantly better on expenditures. So let's go to the next page and first look at what happened with revenues. We did pretty well except for tuition and fees. In the last fiscal year, we had estimated a 3% reduction in tuition and fees, and it was slightly over 4%. So we had a $1.1 million budget variance, a negative budget variance. We would have been right on the money on our ICCB credit hour grant, but as you recall, they did a last minute 2.25% reduction. So that's what that $200,000 negative variance shows for you. We were right on the money in estimating what the property tax revenue was going to be. And the most sensitive tax we have to the economy is the corporate property replacement tax. And so that's why you can see the economy's been doing better, so we got a little bit more money in that area. So net for the education fund, we budgeted $100 million, and total revenue that came in was $98.9 million. As we do, we monitor this through the year and we report to you. We were not concerned about that because we had been monitoring expenditures. So if you'll turn to page 4, you'll see that we did very well on this, but just under half of this amount, this positive variance of $9.2 million of education fund expenditures came from salaries and benefits. The biggest part of what that's being driven from is the lower enrollment. When we have lower enrollment, we hire less adjuncts. There may not be a need to fill a full-time position. There is some variance that comes from the speed of hiring positions here at the college, but nonetheless, that was the largest part of what was happening with our expenditures. We also did not have to dip into our contingency, so you'll see under other expenditure where that is really the second largest number of $1.4 million. We always carry anywhere from $300,000 to $600,000 in contingency. Since the expenditure numbers were doing so well, we didn't have to use the contingency to offset the revenue loss. And then finally, the way that we accrued our utility bills, our May and June utility bills, as Chairman Griffin knows from his utility days, don't come in until after June 30th, so we have to estimate what those bills are going to be, and so what they finally come in at is sometimes a surprise, often because of the weather. That happened in 2014. It caused an artificial credit in the following fiscal year, and so that's why you're going to see that number go back up next year. Okay.
David, could I just quickly, does any of that, good news on the expenditure side have anything to do with us being a year behind on putting the science building together?
No.
No? Thank you.
We had expected the operating expenditures of the science building to start hitting, they should start hitting by, for sure, next year's budget. In July 1st, you'll see the full year's operating expenses, but we'll see how the schedule goes with the science building.
Okay.
So, but he raises a good question in terms of if it's not the science building, what the biggest thing here is the salaries. And what I was thinking of is how you're making students make the decision about being in class and paying for class and not waiting. Like, that was a big administrative change. Does that really give you a lot more clarity in hiring and how many sections you're gonna have to fill, how many positions you have to have? Is that, I mean, I'm thinking that might have a big part of that. Is that right?
Knowing that you have paid students in the class helps make the decision of whether a class will go or no go.
Right. And whether you
Oftentimes, like before we had that, you may have a class, and I'm just going to throw out a number of 12. And you're trying to make a determination, are you going to run it or are you not going to run it? Well, before the system making students pay, you could have had 6 of those students who hadn't paid yet and had no intention of attending. So you let it go, you end up with a class of 6.
Right.
In this case, you know there are 12 and they are paid.
They're solid.
Yeah.
Solid numbers. Well, I mean, see, that's what I was thinking of when I was seeing this big difference and even more clarity. So is it really
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Yeah, we fully know now in the fall, 3 weeks before the semester starts, whether a class should or should not run, and 2 weeks in the spring. Additionally, where we saw the biggest impact for exactly that was in the summer, where students aren't always quite committed, so we had much better data. Another big number that's impacted in here is our loss in collections has dropped dramatically because of this. It dropped from being close to $800,000 a year to $350,000.
Well, it's a win-win for those reasons, but it's also a win-win for, you're gonna know whether you need to hire somebody, you're not hanging anybody on the string. It seems like everybody benefits from that change that you implemented. So I think good for you guys that you put that in place. It just keeps it a lot cleaner. Everybody benefits from it.
Okay, just a few notes about the fund balance. You heard that it is about 31% of operating expenditures, and it's going to be $30.7 million. We'd be adding a net $350,000. The board has already previously approved, and it's recorded in your comprehensive annual financial report that you have in front of you, the $8 million surplus that we have that are going to be dedicated to one-time projects. Right, and a little bit note on the auxiliary fund, since you had some questions on this. This is the first year that I've been here that the actual revenues matched the actual expenditures. So that was good. We still, though, are, if you see the note at the bottom, we are still transferring into the auxiliary funds $1.1 million to subsidize them. If you look on the next page, you'll see where that all occurs. With athletics, why we show a loss there. There are 2 things that are transferred in to help out athletics. One, additional 50-cent per credit hour fee that we created to help athletics, but the education fund also helps support that. There you see the $479,000 transfer, Trustee Paul, from the bookstore. That's what goes into the education fund, and you'll see food service, child care, performing arts, and WPDI all had transfers in. The net transfers in after you take out the bookstore works out to a $350,000 subsidy to the auxiliary funds. And the fund balance, we netted $38,000 to the fund balance, and so that is at the end of this year is going to be set at $360,903. And that's it. Any questions on last year's budget performance?
Okay.
Thank you.